What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, programmers of all ages? Welcome back to this week's introduction to HaxeFlixel game programming tutorial. Wow, that was a mouthful. In any case, so before we start this week's tutorial, I just want to show you something that maybe you yourself have been dealing with whilst programming. So if I open the open Visual Studio Code and I just like zoom in a bit, so you might notice that, let me just click on this and set it back to what I found it as, HTML5, I think. Now if I press F1 and restart language server, you might get this pop-up which says unable to build cache completion. Features may be slower than expected. Try fixing the errors and restarting the language server, and if you press show errors, you say retry. Just wait for it one moment. It says that it is having issues accessing the required system platform. You might have another issue. I had one where it couldn't access some of the things from OpenFL. In any case, to fix this error, you click on this, but you should have the Lime plugin installed as well. So you click on this, then you scroll down to #link/debug, then you press F1, restart language server, and as it compiles, you should see that it compiles successfully, no more error, and now you should have code completion on your editor. I kind of wish I had this last week when I was coding blindly from my notes, but in any case, it can't be helped. So let me just make this a bit more usable for me. That seems about right. Okay, so now with that out of the way, in last week's tutorial we added the main menu state, which means we aren't just yeeted right into the game when we start our program. Now to build off of that, and I will admit this does show my inexperience with game development a bit. I wish I kind of thought of this earlier before manually tweaking all of the variables every time we wanted to test the mailer characters. I deleted the others, only set the mailer characters. And a light bulb hit whilst preparing this week's tutorial. Why don't I have a scene made specifically for testing out things like this? And well, that's what we're gonna do this week, and for the next few weeks actually, is we're gonna work on setting up our test scenes, one for melee characters, one for range characters, and one for the boss character. That way, if say we added the health bar, we can test it on the melee character specifically inside the melee character test scene. So just before we start, let's right click on the sources file, click new file, and then we say testing with a small e, testing menu state.hx. Awesomeness. So we can say class testing menu state extends flx state, and then we can just go down, override, we just click on override the create function. Cool. So that is not everything that we're going to do for the test menu state. First, I just want to go back to the main menu state. I am not happy with how we set it up last time. It bugged me a bit. There was a few things that I didn't quite understand, and I feel kind of like an idiot for last week's tutorial, so I want to fix that. So first things first, we create a new button. So we say private variable, we call it testing, and it's up type flx button. Cool. Now the first fix that I want to do is here you can say that the first variable is x, but we set it as 50, and that is quite frankly my mistake. That should have been a 0. We want to move it down on the y-axis by 20. We don't care for the field width. That gets fixed as we do the introduction to HaxeFlixel. That sets it on its own to make sure that it fits in. And then we say that the size is 18. So it is, well, currently set to the same font size as my editor is. So it's 18. So screen alignment is still center. We center it. So the alignment is for the text. So we center the text. Then we center the text object in the x-axis. So if from top to bottom is y-axis, from left to right is x-axis. So we say center it in the x-axis. So sort of like here with the menu bars title, forgot the name of it, and then we add the title. Now here comes the thing that I want to fix. So currently we do a lot of math to set it up like the way we want it, and it's very, I almost want to say convoluted, because I tried adding another testing button and I just for the life of me couldn't, and I realized that is because I'm thinking of this the wrong way, and there should be a better way of setting up the buttons. So to start off with, we can just delete the buttons. Now how I want to go about the buttons, I first want to set the button that's going to be aligned on the middle of the screen, and for us that's going to be the testing button. So testing equals new FLX button, or we set it initially at 0, 0 on the X and Y, we call it test, and we say for now we can just say null. We will come back to setting an actual function for this, don't worry. So then we say testing dot screen center is on, so we do the same we did here, we center it on the X, but we also want to say center on the X and the Y, so it's going to be slap bang in the middle of our screen. And then we add testing. So you can think of this testing button, oh, forgot my colon. So you can think of this testing button as a type of constant that we work against according to how we set things. So now, because testing has been set, we can just adjust the rest of our buttons to be on top or below the testing button. And I know it's a bit weird because we'll have the play button first, then the testing button, then the exit button, and now we're setting this button first, but I found this way a lot more readjustable and easier to like figure out in my mind, rather than going, so play button, we need to adjust a bit, so minus a few pixels, add this. It, after a while, it just got very difficult to figure out what exactly we are doing and how to add more things to it. So next we say FLX button at 0.00. We say play and then null again for now. We already have the function for it, but I just want to set it up so that we can see it first. So play.screen center on the X, so that we don't have to set up the math for centering it on the X-axis every time. We can just say center it for us, and then we just worry about the Y every time. So play.y equals testing.y. So where the testing button is on the Y-axis, so we move the play button up by the height of the play button, and then we want an additional 2 pixel space or 2 unit space between the play button and the testing button. When we center the testing button on X and Y, it's gonna be like, say for instance this semicolon right here is the mid. What we do is when we center the testing, we have it exactly on it. So half of the testing is above it and half of it is below it. So when we move it up by the full amount, it will be right up against it. There won't be any space and it feels a bit cramped. So we just add an additional 2 unit space just to give it a bit of spacing in between. And then we want to add the play button. Awesome. So next is the exit button. So exit equals new FLX button at 0.00. Then we give it a text of exit. And just for now, we say that is null. So exit dot screen center on the x-axis. Then exit dot y equals the testing button dot y plus exit dot height plus an additional 2 unit spacing, and then we add it to the scene. So now if we say add exit, so let me just compile this. So we say line test debug, no, line test HL hyphen debug, if I can type. So this will just compile. I'm gonna add a little cut here and then come back for when it has compiled. Okay, it has finished compiling. Now you can see that we have the test button, which is slap bang in the middle of the screen. We have the play button right above that, and then we have the exit button right below that. And yet now you can also see we added a bit of spacing between the top bar and the title, which I think looks a bit nicer. It doesn't feel as crammed as it did. And in all honesty, I feel kind of dumb about making that mistake last week, but last week was not my best week, and I ask forgiveness for that. But now you can see we have the play button, test button, and exit button. Now we just need to hook them up to their functionality. Cool. So we have click play already, so we can just add that. And we have click exit already, so click exit. And now I just want to add one more function for the click test. So it's private function click test, and then go down one. Then we say flxg dot camera dot fade flx color dot black, and we want to fade for 0.33 duration, false, because we don't want a fade in. And then the callback function, so after the fade is done, we say flxg dot switch state and new testing menu state. Awesome. So that should be it as far as this goes. So let's see if we have the ability now to go to testing menus state. So I'm just going to compile it, and then we'll be right back. Okay, that's compiled. So let me just drag this down a bit. Now if we click on testing, I know what my mistake is. I've made this mistake before. I forgot to give it the function. Click test. Okay, let's try this again. So line test HL dash or hyphen debug. So let's see if we can do this a second time. We'll be back after this shortcut. Okay, it has finished compiling. So now if we click on test, it fades over to a new scene, which we have not set up yet. So let's quickly go over into the testing menu state, and let's set this up. So it's going to be roughly the same as what we did with the main menu state. So we say private var title of flx text. Next up is private var melee map of type flx button. Private var ranged map of type flx button. And then finally private var, well, not finally, sorry. boss map of type FLX button. And now finally we want a button to be able to go back to the main menu state. So we say private var back and then FLX button. Awesome. Now just to first off import that, control save. Awesome. So in our create function that we override, we just make some space. And now this is going to be pretty similar to how we did it in the main menu state. First off is the title. So we say title equals new FLX text, which we start at 0.0. We move it down 20 units. We say field width of 0. We call it testing menu, if I can spell correctly. And then we say it is a text size of a font size of 18. Cool. So title dot alignment equals center. Title dot screen center on the x-axis. And then we want to add title to our scene. Okay, so now same as how we did it with the main menu, I want to start with the middle button, or middle buttons in this case, since there are 2 buttons in the middle, since we have 4 buttons. And so we set the first button, the second button, and then the button on top and the bottom button on the middle, or on the bottom, my bad. So we're going to follow the same way we did it here. So the first button will be melee map, second will be range map, then boss map, then back. So ranged and boss will be in the middle. So let's start with the top middle first. So ranged map equals new FLX button. We started off at 0.00. So ranged map. And just for now, I know this will probably bite me in the ass again, as it did like 10 minutes ago. So ranged map dot screen center x and y. Ranged map dot y. Now the issue is, since there are 2 buttons in the middle, we have to move them up and down a bit so that there is a 2 unit space between them. So we say that we start off with where the button currently is on the y-axis. Then we want to move it up by an amount, by half of the button's height. So ranged map dot height divided by 2. And then we just want to add an additional 1 pixel space between it and move it up 1 unit space, and then we'll move the other button down by 1 unit space so that there's a 2 unit space between them, while still having the buttons in the center of the y-axis. And then finally we want to add it to our scene. Next up is the boss map equals new FLX button at 0.00, boss map as its text, and we say null for the functionality now. So boss map dot screen center, we center it on the x and the y axis. Boss map dot y, now we want to move it down like we did with the ranged map button. So we say boss map dot y plus now half of the button's height, map dot height divided by 2 plus an additional 1 pixel, and then add it to our scene. So add boss map. Okay, so now it is the melee button, which is going to be the first button. So it's going to be on top of the ranged map button. So we can say melee map equals new FLX button. We start at 0.00. We give it a text of melee map, and then we just give it null for now. We say melee map dot screen center. We center it on the x-axis. Next we say melee map dot y equals the where the range map currently is on the y-axis minus the height of the melee map, and then we add an additional 2 units of spacing in between the two. So we say add melee map. And now finally is the back button. So we say back equals new FLX button. We start off at 0.00. Go back. And we say null for now. So back dot screen center on the x-axis. And then we say back dot y equals boss map dot y plus back dot height, and then plus an additional 2 units of spacing, and then we add it to our screen. So now let's see what that looks like. So if we compile it, I will be back as soon as this compilation is finished. Okay, so the compilation is finished. We are in the main menu. Now if we click on test, we can see there's the testing. We have the melee map, 2 units of spacing, ranged map, 2 units of spacing, boss map, 2 units of spacing, and then the button to go back. And currently none of them are hooked up to functions, but we'll do that momentarily. But you can see it is a lot easier now to map out where the buttons are if you just start with a constant and move your way from there, rather than just trying to map out where it's going to be on the screen at all times. So if we close this now. So let's create a few private functions to do the map to be called from the button press. So first one is a private function called click melee. We go down. We say flxg dot, let me just import it, flxg dot camera dot fade and flx color. Let me import that. Now thus far we've only used the black fade, but I want to show you that you can use other colors. We just use black because it fits with the background already. So we say red for this fade. We want to fade for 0.33 units. We don't care about it fading in on the other side. And then we have a callback function. Just add the semicolon so we don't forget. And then we say flxg dot switch state new melee test state. And we don't currently have a melee test state. But now that we are calling it, we can go over to source, click new, and then just say melee test state dot hx. And just before we go back, just to make sure we don't forget later, we can just quickly set up the basics for it. So melee test state extends flx state, and then override the create function. Cool. So for this part, we can just copy it for when we create the other states that we're going to create now. So before I forget again, now that we have a melee button, we can hook it up. So to click melee, next function is private function click ranged. And we say flxg dot fade dot camera dot fade flx color, and let's go with RGB for the first 3 buttons. So we have R, now we need green. We fade for 0.33 units, we don't care about fading in, and then we have a callback function. Don't forget our semicolon. Now we say flxg dot switch state, and then new range test state. Cool. So now we just create the file for it. So on source, right click, new file, ranged test state dot hx. We can just control V. And then from here we say ranged test state. And then we can just import flx state. Cool. So let me close those two. So before we forget again, on the range button, let's hook it up to its function. Click range. Okay, second last button is the boss button. So private function, click boss, flxg dot camera dot fade flx color dot blue, fade for 0.33 units, we don't care about fading in, and then our callback function, and don't forget your semicolon. And we say flxg dot switch state, and we want to create a new boss test state. Cool. And then we create the file for it. So new file, boss test state dot hx, and we can just control V and then change the range to boss. Awesome. So we can just click the get the click boss, and then not on the back, on the boss button. And now finally we can just control C, control V. So this is going to be click back, and we used all RGB colors. Well, we used red, green and blue, and now for the fourth one, since it's my favorite color, we can just go with orange, because why not? You can use whatever color you want. And then for the switch state, we say menu state. And then we just hook it up. Click back, so control C, control V. Cool. Now there's one thing I want you to note about creating menu states. Whenever we call switch state, it tears down the state we are currently in and then just recreates a new state for whatever we wanted to create. So there isn't really any saved memory between states. We will have to set that up manually, so just keep that in mind. There isn't like a FLX switch state back or anything. We just say switch state and then new menu state to recreate the menu states. Now if we test that out, so line test hl-debug, I will be back when this compiles. Cool, it compiled. Now let me just drag this down a bit. We still have the play button, test button and exit button on the main menu. So if we click on test, we have the melee map, the ranged map and the boss map, and then we go back. So let's see if go back works. You saw it faded out in orange rather than black, so we're back to main menu. So now if we say test, we can click on melee map, but there isn't currently anything here. And we will work on setting up the test map for the melee characters in next week's tutorial, because this week's tutorial is starting to get a bit longer than I like my tutorials to be. because it is absolutely a pain in my ass to upload long videos because of bad Wi-Fi. But before you go, I just want to thank you so much for watching this week's tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to drop a like, subscribe, maybe share the video to some of your friends that you know who want to get into programming or game development. And if you want to support the channel beyond that, and you don't have to by any means, but it is definitely appreciated if you do so, you can head on over to 8bitswag.com, where we sell programming and developer swag. So we have hoodies, stickers, and shirts, with more coming as soon as I get to it. I've been a bit swamped as of late between studies and programming the tutorials, but I am definitely still working on the site. It's still a work in progress, and there are new merchandise that will be added. I have plans on adding more. I'm not just going to stop at hoodies, shirts and stickers, although I definitely am quite proud of what's already on there. So by all means, maybe get yourself a nice Hax hoodie, and then I will see you next week. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Goodbye.